Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I hope and trust that you are all well. Before I begin, I would like to give a very special shout out to the reform members of Back to Ashes: Tavia S., Tina Mead, Cindy Cleveland, Patty's niece, and Samantha Place. The rest of the members can be found right here on the screen. And please know I appreciate each and every one of you for your continued support. If you would like to become a member of Back to Ashes right here on YouTube, or you would like to support a content creator such as myself, you can buy me a coffee. All of that information can be found in the description below. With all of that being said, it is time to go back to ashes. For when we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and happier person in the morning. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack, or tuck in and get warm, and prepare for this dose of vocal melatonin entitled 2 Sentence Horror Stories. Disclaimer: since these are so short, I will only leave a 5-second gap in between each story, but this entire video will be nothing but 2-sentence horror, so there will be a lot of narration. Right after this intro, an ad will play. I'll read the first 5 2-sentence horror stories, another ad will play, and after that, there will be no more ads within this video. Warning: some of these 2-sentence horror stories contain material not suitable for all. Listening discretion is highly advised. My car isn't running, but the zombies are. After years, I finally had the courage to sleep in my room completely in darkness. When I woke up to use the bathroom, I couldn't find my walls. At my first ultrasound appointment, we were so relieved when the DNA test confirmed that my husband is the baby's father. We began to worry again when we saw that the test said, "I'm not the mother." I plugged my mouse in and started my workday as usual. The squealing stopped within a few minutes, but the teeth left me with major rectal damage and bloody stools. My housemate has an incredibly annoying habit of obnoxiously singing right outside the door of my room, though it never bothered or disturbed me as much as while I read the news of his passing. Those were brand new shoes. I really regret breaking your heart. No amount of bleach will wash the bloody pieces of fleshy veins and aorta off the soles of my brand new Nikes. I sentence you to 44 life sentences plus 120 years in prison, the judge says. As I'm arrested, I see the face of my identical twin laughing at the sentence he got because he was the true murderer. I felt his stomach retch as the detective displayed photo after photo of each depraved act. He grabbed the detective's wrist and said, "I'm not saying I'm not responsible, but due to my condition, I don't remember any of these people." I reported my son missing a few days ago. When the police gave him to me, he kept screaming, "You're not my mom! You're not my mom!" Damn child-proof cap, I thought. As my vision went dark, my daughter struggled to open the EpiPen. For a meal like this, the last thing I expected was the smell of cinnamon, said my wife as we continued eating. I was confused when there was initially no reaction, but then I began to feel lightheaded as a sinister smile spread across her face. I'd always wanted to please a girl so hard that her eyes rolled back into her head. She must have been loving it, considering her eyes kept rolling even after I scooped them out with a spoon. I couldn't believe I was seeing myself being strangled. I was paralyzed in fear. That's why I kept looking at the mirror in my bathroom. Knowing that my girlfriend survived the brutal stabbing wasn't enough to make the CCTV footage any less painful to watch. It cut to the bone knowing that she was right about me not being man enough to finish her off. I walked back to my truck after I had finished patting down and disguising the soil over the bags of dismembered bodies, unconnectable to me, I had just finished burying. The sharp realization hit me that I had also dropped my keys in the now extremely well camouflaged hole. I've always wanted to see a dead body. I instantly regretted it when my wife's eyes kept moving after I suffocated her. I sometimes get angry when I remember I haven't seen my family since I was diagnosed with late-stage dementia. Maybe if I hurt the people that come into my house every day and tell me they love me, they'll tell me where my family are. As I tucked my daughter into bed, she said, "Daddy, there's a monster under my bed." I smiled and told her there was nothing to be afraid of, but then I heard a voice whisper, "She's right, you know." As his precision blade finishes cutting through his chest, he cracks the man's rib cage open one rib at a time and places them on the tray. After placing 3 live eels inside, he stitched him back up to the sound of the man's agonizing screams and then moves on to his wife. "Ready or not, here I come," I exclaimed before turning around to find my toddler fixated on me with an eerie gaze. "Help me, Daddy." The muffled voice from the darkened hallway sent shivers down my spine. My wife died a month before my daughter was born. It's a miracle that the unborn baby survived the car fire. I raised my right hand in front of a mirror. I couldn't believe my eyes when the reflection raised the left one. My wife was never good at cleaning up her messes. That's how they caught her. I had to get rid of my husband's body pillow. He was comfortable, but he was starting to stink. It was around 12:31 when Grandma mysteriously passed in her hospital bed. I don't really care though. My Nintendo 3DS is now charged. I woke up in a room with a TV and stuff on a table. All of a sudden, the TV came with a weird-looking guy wearing a strange mask. My wife has been baking recently. 36 hours after trying a muffin she made for her parents, the taste of almonds just keeps getting stronger. After I eaten the strange mushroom my friends had told me to eat, I started feeling a bit dizzy and started to see figures where my friends once stood. After I woke up, my hands were bloodied and mutilated corpses surrounded me. I chased after the wounded Bigfoot with a shotgun in my hands. Unfortunately, I forgot about the bear trap I laid out for him yesterday, which brought a big smile to his face. After his girlfriend broke up with him, my teenage son said he needed some space and locked himself in his room. I'm willing to respect his wishes, but he hasn't left in a few days, and there's some kind of rancid smell coming from his room. I've always been mocked for my intense interest in ghost hunting. Now that I keep finding ectoplasm in my son's rooms, I finally have proof. I know that I could help if I did this one little thing. It'd be a win-win situation for everyone. So I held the gun to my head and pulled the trigger. As his parents left the hospital room, the boy was left alone with his grandmother, who blamed him and called him a coward for following through with his suicide threats. Fully aware but unable to move or speak, he wished he could tell someone that it was his grandmother who pushed him off the balcony. I asked my dead grandmother 3 things. If you can speak to Mother, rotate the medallion. If you can't speak to her, close the bathroom door. If I'm not speaking to my grandmother, turn off the living room light. Oh shit, it's dark in here. Carol grinned confidently as Murray read the results. When it comes to 6-year-old Michael, David, you are not the father. But her grin quickly disappeared as Maury continued. And when it comes to 6-month-old Anthony, David, you are not the father. I thought I'd throw that joke in there pretty well. Enjoy the murderer's juice. It's only available on Halloween, I told my rival and laughed. He rolled his eyes as he gulped down the thallium I mixed in his drink. I smiled to myself and realized my business has lived up to its motto of killing the competition. I've spent 17 years trying to find the person who murdered my parents. I really want to thank them in person. A man calls his wife to tell her he's not going to be home and that he loves her, as he jumps out of the window of the South Tower. My husband's snoring was driving me crazy. Sitting cuffed in the back of the cruiser, I wonder if perhaps I went too far. I learned the hard way that consciousness is created by our brain when I saw my beheaded corpse lying on the other side of the train tracks. Trapped within my own body, paralyzed and silenced, I exist in eternal darkness. If only I had chosen cremation, my ashes might have mingled with the living instead of being condemned to this wretched, haunting abyss. The reflection in the mirror showed Jenny and her twin sister Susie, both looking stunning for the prom in matching outfits. Jenny sighed. Since Susie died last year in a car crash, she was not going to enjoy the evening on her own one little bit. I was so thrilled to say to Mommy that I found my brother, yet she only told me that now I'm about to see why he disappeared. After years of complete darkness, I could finally see again, and yet I still wish the eyes I saw through were mine. I cursed my bad vision as I got closer and closer, trying to make out what was written on the sign. Warning, extreme radiation hazard. If you are 50 feet away from this, you may still have time. Look, Dad, dolphins! My stepson screamed as he jumped in to swim with them. I couldn't help but smile when I saw all the vertical tail fins, knowing that I could now start a proper family without him. My mother-in-law never liked me, always saying that I wasn't good enough for her daughter. Now, as I hide in the darkness under their house, watching as they bury a body that looks just like me, I realize how far she was willing to go. As a doctor, I love each and every one of my patients without bias or preference. Yet, an intriguing curiosity often infiltrates my thoughts. Do any of them retain even the faintest hint of sensation before I begin? Every night I stare at my phone as it rings endlessly and tell myself I'm strong enough to ignore it. As usual, my willpower fails and I answer, crying silently as I listen to my boyfriend's last moments before the crash. The manor was inscribed, "The house that love built," right above the entrance. It was only after I found her body in the walls that I realized what it meant. "Well, folks, this is my stop," the drunk man said, ringing the bell and heading for the door. The plane plunged 200 meters in 3 seconds, flying straight for the ice-tipped mountain. Glancing into the clear blue sky, the young witch saw clearly the golden snitch and readied her broom. She leapt out of the window, plunging 50 feet onto the parking lot of the psychiatric hospital. "Don't worry, kid. Someday someone will take your advice." I thought of that as I read my bully's suicide note. I sat at his graveside, staring down as I whispered, "Are you really gone?" Only to feel an ice-cold breeze on the back of my neck as I hear something say, "Not anymore." After I was bitten by an unspeakable horror in my nightmare, I woke up covered in sweat. It's only after I touched my bite mark that I started doubting if it was really sweat. The rat torture method is undeniably inhumane, resulting in the victim being eaten alive by rats trapped in a bucket against the person's stomach. But each bite took ounces and pounds away, and so I stayed lying down and let them gnaw away until I was beautiful again. I lay out my beach towel, cracked open a cold beer, and sat down to read my book, enjoying a well-deserved vacation. Never have I regretted a decision so much as I Googled what to do when the water recedes. My wife says she changed her mind about the divorce. "This way will be easier," was the last thing I heard before she sank the knife in. I always thought the phrase shut up was an odd way to tell people to stop talking, but I found out today there's a rare condition where you can't hear people talk if their mouth is gagged and taped shut. The little girl in her Red Riding hooded cloak came back home and told her mom all about her dealings with the big bad wolf. After putting the girl to bed, the mom called the battered wolf and screamed, "The next time she goes to her grandmother's house, you had better make sure she doesn't come home." Daddy used to always take me camping with him at night, where we dig all sorts of fun holes together, but he never let me dig the big ones. 25 years later, when I watched the trial on the news, I now know that these weren't camping trips, and the big holes my father dug were for his dates the previous evening. Caressing my wife's cheek with my lips, I was reminded of her soft cotton-like skin, while my prized possession was filled by the same soft material on the inside. Her eyes remained as lifeless as the day before. My boyfriend showed me the piano room in his house, and since I know a few songs, I sat down and tried to play something. When the keys felt hard to press down on, my boyfriend deadpanned, "Oh, I forgot to take Lizzie out of there." Hearing the 12th shot hitting something and still not feeling anything, I finally mustered the courage to open my eyes. In front of me, the lifeless body of the love of my life slowly began to fall. Growing up, we only had one rule and I broke it. Always say goodbye before you put away the Ouija board, or else they'll continue to whisper and the game will never end. My neighbor was a YouTuber, but the annoying kind that did anything to go viral. One day, when my neighbor was on a trip, I got a large box that was heavy. I barely was able to get it into my garage, but I did drop it and heard a crack. The team of astrophysicists stared in awe at the first clear video of the black hole in the center of our galaxy. And then it blinked. After hearing voices for years, seeing shadows crawling along the walls at night, and it becoming increasingly difficult to tell what was real and what wasn't, I was finally able to convince my parents to get me some help. Unfortunately, due to their beliefs, instead of getting me in to see a psychiatrist, they contacted an exorcist. No matter how many I try, not a single pair of eyes I tried. Let me see, I'm the monster they accuse me to be. For weeks now, I have been slowly drugging my girlfriend's father via his teas so that when he dies, I can finally marry his daughter. But now, while I stood in front of the body of my beloved, I laughed hysterically as I realized that it hadn't been him who was drinking the tea that I prepared every day. She could feel the heat from his body despite the chilling rain pouring through the leaves, and she stared into his smoldering eyes with longing. The lightning strike had left him a bit rare, but the smell was delicious, and she was ravenous. I went to the dentist and it wasn't the most taken care of place, and the doctor wasn't dressed too professionally. I then remember that the hallucinations were wearing off and the chair in front of me wasn't for the dentist. As we sat huddled against the wall of the trench, I checked my watch. 11 a.m. Armistice. Peace at last. That's when the hand grenade landed in my lap. I noticed someone was following me when I was going home in the dark. I do live in a house that's far away from any other houses, so I decided to call my mom. I started running for my life when I heard her phone ringing behind me, and a male voice started to whisper into the phone, "Run." As I heard the scratching and barking of my dog outside my bedroom door, I stopped halfway. If my dog was outside my door, then what was sleeping beside me the entire time? My next-door neighbor made a delicious pie for me. As I was sampling it, I told her I hadn't seen her husband for several days. After forgetting to bring my CPAP machine on vacation with me, I was glad to get home and strap it on for a decent night's sleep. I hadn't realized the cockroaches had made a nest inside it until dozens came pouring down the tube and into my mask. The dying old man heaves and spews blood, collapsing onto the hard floor. As his cloudy eyes rolled back to meet yours, something bursts from his abdomen and rushes out to greet you. My blood began to boil with rage as the judge exclaimed, "Not guilty," thus declaring my freedom. With no home or resources to provide for myself, I'll have to be even more reckless to guarantee my next victim lands me a retirement with 3 meals and adequate shelter. What's the difference between the sky and the earth? Only one of the two is where I dispose of my victims. My mother had always been a bit odd and superstitious. She had lit candles for my late father and brother before their untimely deaths. It wasn't until she began muttering the word "next" over and over again each time she would look at me did I finally realize who the third candle was for. Me and my friends wandered into a cabin in the woods. Little did my friends know they would be next. Their screams would become the symphony of my twisted desires. A parent should never have to bury their child. I just wish you loved me as much as I love you, my only sunshine. Horror struck me and a cold sweat ran down my face, hoping in my very core that what was happening wasn't real. It was after the diarrhea started to run down my legs that I could no longer deny my reality. Me and my family went to the hospital to meet someone who were on their deathbed. But as soon as we got there, I saw my own body on the bed while my family began to mourn my death. They say that when you die, your life will flash before your eyes, but what I saw was a continuation. Jamie, I can't breathe, babe. I know, hold still. It'll be over soon. After getting separated from the other spelunkers and lost in the enormous cave for days, I finally saw a light. As I got nearer, I recognized another from my group. She was impaled and roasting over a crude fire pit. The cloaked figures around it all slowly turned to look at me. Children's voices are always so sweet and cute, except when it's night and you hear them from under your bed, but you know there are no children around. The man thought he was having normal sex, but then spiders started crawling out of her breasts. I walked through town, giddy with the fact no one noticed me on Halloween night, even though I was covered in blood and my bag wasn't full of candy. I woke up to my toddler crawling all over me, trying to get next to me in bed. It was around when I felt the fifth or sixth leg that I remembered he and my wife were with the in-laws for the weekend. I'm lost and can't remember who I am, but that feels less important after I started seeing all this writing on the walls of the infinity hallways. I wish someone could explain to me what Site 13 is and why they were asking what happened to it. My blood ran cold, and all I could do was remember the stories my grandma used to tell about those forsaken by the gods. I stood there frozen, seeing the demon's bloody sickle in its left hand and my mother's head in its right. My beautiful funeral, which was attended by all my friends and family, wasn't just a dream. Unfortunately, I awoke to the hollow sound of the dirt hitting the lid of the casket. After surviving the night's terror, finding my daughter alive filled me with joy. The ink-black eyes and bloody teeth my headlamp revealed sealed my fate. My girlfriend sent me a joke picture of her in the back rooms, but as days turned into weeks, I realized she wasn't joking. Although I knew my brother was messy growing up, I was impressed that he had a shiny new floor in his house. That was until I noticed that the floor was moving. Every time I get out of the bathroom, I slam the door. Today, my brother was crying, so I came out of the bathroom. As soon as I got out, there was silence, and I also remembered my brother passed away years ago. I don't want to die. It was the only choice I had, my best friend shouted through sobs. I lifted up my revolver with no remorse. You don't hide bites. She said, "You'll be my boyfriend forever," as she took out a sharp razor blade and started cutting deep into his wrists, making blood pool around his body. My grandpa with Alzheimer's kept complaining of a man entering his house, so we increased his medication. It wasn't until the day he passed and we started emptying his house we noticed that a lot of stuff was actually missing. The doctors found a way to stop my disease from spreading any further. I don't know how long it's been, but it's dark and I'm starting to get hungry. Mom, where do we go after death? My sweet little girl asked. 3 hours later, I regret ever saying, Heaven, my darling angel. I'm back, said my daughter in a voice that wasn't hers. I sighed wearily and opened the book to try the ritual once more. I thought the masked figure in the haunted house attraction was scary enough. Then he caught my eye and said, just loud enough to hear, Please, I've been kidnapped. Please, help me get this thing off. Just before the procedure, the surgeon's forehead glistened with sweat. Then it glistened with blood as his former patient enacted his revenge. It cost an arm and a leg, but I finally got my girlfriend a new car. I just hope she forgives me after the anesthesia wears off. I was thrilled when the tribunal found me not guilty of witchcraft. The joy was short-lived as my lungs filled with water. Dad, I need some more M&Ms, I yelled, my voice flowing through the corridor. But as the man refilled my jar, I recognized that those weren't M&Ms, but the pills he gave Mom the same day she died. Night after night, I clutched her cold and rigid body as I yearned for respite from my harrowing dreams. Her porcelain eyes locked onto mine before she blinked, her lifeless lips forming a chilling smile. My husband surprised me with a cleaning service for our anniversary. Actually, his surprise was the man with the knife, but they did a good job. Sexual assaultists have the most rotten brain. Therefore, I make sure not to include them in my recipes. Sometimes I think about her, the apple of my eye, the love of my life. When I miss her too much, I open the freezer. My doctor said that they were able to contain the cancer, but today, a man in a dark suit stood at the end of my bed smoking a cigarette. My grandma has dementia and likes to hide in random places throughout the house. She hasn't remembered my name in 3 years. So who was calling for me from the closet? Today I saw a face looking through my bathroom window. The weirdest part is that I live on the 3rd floor. I was casually brushing my teeth, and then I saw my toothbrush in the cup and a razor in my hand. Sweat dewed on my forehead as I nervously watched the ice cream truck pull over by my driveway. My heart raced as I followed the driver, blood-stained uniform, throwing a large bag in my trash can. I miss you too, Grandma. My blood ran cold as I hung up the phone. She had joined Grandpa at the cemetery 4 years ago. I've been stressed about my surgery for weeks, but after I woke up from the procedure, it felt as if a huge weight had fallen from my shoulders. I didn't realize arms weighed so much, but I was only here for a gallbladder removal. I really don't get how my best friend would betray me after saving her life. She called the police on me after she found her abusive husband's decapitated head in my freezer. After 3 long years, I was finally able to visit my daughter's new house in Seattle. I made it halfway to her porch before I noticed the smell. I got on the last train home, noticing I was the only passenger. When the ticket inspector arrived, he looked at me in horror and whispered, "Who are you talking to?" None of us have been able to stop laughing for hours. I genuinely thought we'd succumb to despair when we had to resort to eating those who didn't survive the crash. My mom said I shouldn't have crawled away from the oven. I just wanted to know what the outside looks like before my family comes over. I was afraid of the dark, so my dad bought me glow-in-the-dark stars. They were cool until I saw 2 of them blink. I won't get up from my chair and close the closet. It will sense my movements and will realize it is no longer imprisoned. "Doc, I thought you said the tumor was nothing to worry about." "No," the doctor said. "I said it wouldn't worry you for long." I watched as my kids ran up to their mother, joy beaming in their eyes. "Mommy, you're back," they yelled as she held them in her embrace. Looking back, I regret not telling them that their mother had died months ago in a car crash. You know the rules, no fake piercings allowed on campus. I turned around to tell my teacher my septum piercing was real, and then he grabbed it and pulled it out. Paramedics found the soon-to-be mother deceased, but the infant inside was still alive. They realized her cause of death when the claws protruded from her stomach and slashed it open. "Let's eat, Grandpa." I watched in horror as my kids, who both evidently failed their ELA class, made quick work of the old man. She looked out of the window and saw the monster that killed her family staring at her. Little did she know, she was looking at a mirror. I thought I could trust my doctor when he said I could make it to my birthday in July. Little did I know, it was cancer season. Before my dad leaves from tucking me in, I tell him check under the bed for monsters. He laughs strangely before telling me, "Silly child, monsters don't live under the bed. They live inside them. Goodbye." I woke up and got a little creeped out when I found my cat at the end of my bed, unmoving, staring off into the dark hallway, and I playfully asked him what he was looking at to help myself calm down. His head swiveled 180 degrees, and the hollow voice coming from the bloody hole where his face used to be said, "It's not the dark hallway that you should be worried about." I watched my reflection in the mirror as I spun around, the black leather dress hugging my curves perfectly. After I figured out I couldn't take the dress off, I realized that it wasn't made of leather, but human skin. I'm sitting here at my computer and my cat just walked into the room. What's been rubbing between my legs? The surgery was a success, my husband whispered as he slowly removed the bandages from my face. In the mirror, my sister-in-law's face came into focus, and I realized then that he loved her more than me. At 80 miles per hour, his car skidded sideways underneath the gasoline tanker truck. He proceeded to choke to death on his own blood before the flames consumed his almost lifeless body. The man on the TV said something stupid that the kids laughed at. Then I noticed it was a trial for a triple homicide showing human bodies cut up and down into skin suits. The patient was missing his skeleton when he woke up, and the doctor was never heard from again. Anyhow, that's how I lost my medical license. I'm going to lie down. I have a headache. Mommy, why has Grandpa been asleep for over 10 hours? When I was too little to remember, I let my intrusive thoughts won. Those big-ass scissors for gardening and my manhood. How was my daughter? Hopefully not too loud while we were away, right? I didn't realize the people living downstairs stayed for the holidays, and as we connected eyes, I knew my fate was sealed. After tying my dog to a nearby stump, I let my curiosity get the best of me, and I decided to climb up the stairs in the middle of these woods. After feeling uneasy, I decided to walk back down the stairs, only to see my dog, a pile of bones. I sleep with an octopus plushie at night. I could feel its tentacles on my face while I was sleeping, only to realize the next morning that it was on the floor all night. Come on, kiddo, he grinned as he backed her into a corner. I promise it's not gonna hurt much. Not for me, anyways, she said, baiting him closer and licking at the fangs beneath her lips. The car in front of me crashed into a tree. I held the driver's hand until she passed away, but I feel kind of bad for taking it home. My wife came back from her trip to Japan looking different. Why is her smile so wide, and why is there blood dripping from her wrists? As I stabbed my wife's killer for the third time, I couldn't help but feeling sadness, regret, and pain. But I knew I was doing a justice, even if I wanted to stop because of how much I was hurting my own self. I stared deep into the empty eye sockets of the bleeding mask. It really was my best work. "Oh, thank God, dear, you are here," she said, then looked at my hands and saw a blood-stained knife and realized who made her parents scream. The knock. She heard a knock at the door at 3 a.m., but when she came downstairs, the door was already open. My wife looked so peaceful in her sleep. I always wondered what she looked like while awake. All the children frantically dashed toward the shatterproof glass the moment the zookeeper on the platform above them yelled, "Feeding time," through the speaker system. Their screams and terror were quickly drowned out by the growling and roar of something massive with a matching appetite. Walking through the forest, he saw a stranger sitting there alone and decided to strike up a conversation. He hollered toward the stranger, "Why are you sitting inside a circle of salt?" Overwhelmed by the bully's behavior, I wrote his name on a paper and then burnt it. It was quite a shock when the next day he came to school with a bruised leg, saying that he had burnt himself with boiling water. As a child, I was a curious boy and dismantled appliances to see how things worked. As a CIPA patient, I became curious about how others felt physical pain. After 22 years of resisting, the murderous voices in my head came to a halt. For a moment, I was overwhelmed with joy. Then I noticed my son began talking with himself. I work on this junkyard for years now, having a simple job of crushing old cars. Today, I've noticed blood dripping from one of the cars, so when I opened the trunk, I almost threw up when I saw a person lying in their own pool of blood. My wife Janine has taken on this persona of a lovable, wouldn't-hurt-a-fly golf-loving woman. Clutching my chest, I learned all too well one night why she said not to let the kids open her bedside table. Unable to resist my feelings any longer, I entered the chamber where he kept her. I hardly had time to register the antimatter reaction as her skin interacted with our world's matter for the first time. "Don't worry, I won't do anything to you," the kidnapper told me with a sadistic smile. "Her, on the other hand," he said, pointing his knife towards my pet dog. As the moon cast an eerie glow on the dense foliage, a lone soldier froze in his tracks, his heart pounding in his chest. He whispered a question that hung in the air. Did the jungle just breathe? I I'm so glad, my grandfather's tombstone read, that I'm the 144,000th witness to die. To hell with all of you. As I sit on the floor clutching my rifle, I hope that I can't trust my eyes, because if I can, I don't think I have enough bullets for the thing I saw in the lake. I wake up in the middle of the night and Pennywise is clutching my blanket, shivering. Before I can scream, he says, "Help me." With the last bullet, he decided that his child was better off not getting ripped apart by the zombies bashing against the bathroom door. But after the deafening bang, they started shouting, "Drop your weapon, sir." I walked out of the maternity ward holding a baby boy and feeling like a new woman. My mafia goons doing an excellent job of restraining the young couple begging me to return their child. As a child, I'd suffer from sleep paralysis and regularly see a woman sitting ever closer to the foot of my bed. "Whose toes are those?" she'd screech, while licking at her rancid, rotting teeth. Every astronomy geek was excited to see the asteroid hit. The fun ended when it unfurled its wings. Eyes and teeth equally numerous and plentiful, form as shapeless and dark as a starless night. The demon of shadows and smoke walks our world unseen. The sun vanished, leaving only an ominous void in the sky. As darkness engulfed the universe, the lurking black hole seized its chance, drawing everything towards its inescapable grasp. "Oh, sweetie, it's okay, I'm sorry." Watching my mother cock his own gun back, I held my black eye and turned as he grabbed the gun from her grasp and braced himself. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't figure out what was wrong with the movie she was watching. As she got up to get more chips, she realized that the house and person in the kitchen looked awfully familiar. They say all animals have souls. I'm haunted every night by the ghost of everyone I've ever eaten. A shadow swept over the red-hot sand and I yanked my wife's arm. "Don't stare at a solar eclipse, you'll go blind." My wife broke free and locked her gaze on the diminishing fireball in the sky. We're all about to freeze to death anyway, and I wanted to see how they did it. Everything came out at the therapist's office. The pills, the alcohol, overeating, her body images. She sobbed, flushed the toilet, and tidied up for her first client of the day. They told me that words cut deeper than most wounds. Got in an argument with the devil and met my doom. Alrighty, dear listeners, thank you for tuning in. I'm so sorry this one's a little bit shorter, but it's all of the stories that I could find for this. So if you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you kindly. If you are listening, I hope you've enjoyed this collection. Until next time, I'll read to you soon. Have yourself a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good night.